What's going on YouTube? I'm JPEX and I'm back with another Gray Zone Warfare video for you, and today we're going to be talking FOV. What is it? Why it matters? What's the difference? Everything FOV. So first of all, what is FOV? FOV is field of view. Basically, it's what is visible on your screen at any given point. It is kind of like an angle. So think of it like you can picture your character's face. It's the angle of viewing that you can get from there. So for example, I run 60 FOV, so I have an angle of 60 that comes out of the character's nose, basically, and that's what I get on the screen. Now in Gray Zone, you have the option to run 50 all the way up to 75, and you can see the difference of how much is visible on my screen at any given point. Now this is an angle, so it's a kind of a cone of vision, the difference between this. So keep in mind that on the lower FOV, you're not going to have as much screen tearing or fish lensing, more or less, on the outskirts, just due to the angle that you can see. Now, the difference between the two FOVs, it may make a large difference of what you can see on the screen, but where it comes into play the most in Gray Zone specifically is with scopes. So, for example, on a 50 FOV, you can see I can see from the tent to the truck, right? But if I jump all the way up to 75, you get all of this extra space from here to here, right? And then same thing on this side, you get the tent all the way over. But the difference is it zooms out your vision. And so when you're using a lower FOV, for example, they base this FOV on 50, and most of the scopes 1x is based on 50. And I'll show you what I mean in a second, is that when you're zooming in, it's going to be the same exact FOV that you see at 50. But if you go up to 75, you can even tell like it zooms in on the gun, right? As well, like the gun zooms out. So your scope itself is going to be smaller. Your targets are going to be smaller. And there's a reason that I run 60, because I've done some testing on this. This is kind of what I use scope wise, and we'll get into this in a quick second. But for our testing, I'll show you what I mean on vertical FOV of 50. So we'll go ahead and save this. You can see this guy right here with my red dot. You can see him. He's pretty nice, you know, right in the center of the screen when I ADS. He's just right there. Now what I'll do is I'll pop off this pillad, and we'll put on this Voodoo 1.6, or sorry, the Razor 1.6, and this is something that you can buy. This is just a scope that you buy outright. It's a 1.6x. But the reason that I want to use the 1x is because when I zoom in, you can tell the difference of the guy itself. He doesn't change at all. So you see him as normal size on the screen and the exact same size on the screen itself, right? Now, let me kick over FOV to 75. We'll exit out of this as well. Now you can see how much smaller he is on the screen as well. But when you zoom in, it makes a bigger difference, because at the 1x, he's basically half the size of what he is on the screen now. And it may be a little difficult to tell overall, but you can tell like the way it zooms out that 1x. And it's because you're pulling the field of view away from the gun. And so when the gun pulls up, it doesn't compensate for that extra FOV. And your zoom level of the gun itself is at the same exact zoom level it would have been at 50 FOV compared to 75 FOV. And that's why you get that kind of like, it's a half X. It's not even like the full 1x. And if I zoom in, probably 2x is where it's close to the same, which is why I say half x. And so that's why you kind of have to run on a 2 or a 3x when you're running a higher FOV. And it's kind of a little annoying, because I wish you could have, you know, the ability to just zoom in. But the difference at 6x at the 70 FOV is also, and you can tell like when you're zooming in, you can tell like the size of what this guy looks like compared to at 50 FOV. look at the difference at 6x of how much more target space you have to shoot at. Now, some of you may have god tier aim, I don't, so it's kind of one of those things where it adds a little bit of a easier shot for me to shoot at somebody at this size compared to, and I'll run it back one more time just to show you, compared to this size. Now from this distance I shouldn't miss, but that's kind of the difference of, you can tell how large that changes between the two. Now we can even move this a little bit different. Now this is the Viper, we'll use a 3.5x as a reference. And the reason that you can use this 3.5 is because as you change, and I do like the Viper scope quite a bit, but the default, like if you're running 75 FOV, right? You're running 75 FOV, and you can tell too, as you kind of like move around, you can tell that the world kind of warps on the sides of the screen. Remember, it's like a fisheye lens. It's not really like saying, oh, we're going to be pulling the screen in to where you can tell everything is the same exact, but like you can even see, like for example, if you look on the left side of my screen at this guy right here, right in the center, and as I move him over, the size of him changes quite a bit. Like he's much larger now on the left side of my screen as he is when I'm looking right at him. And that's because it's kind of warping the edges of your screen when you're using this. And so I recommend, if you're going to be running the higher FOV, run these. These are from Banshee, the Viper or the Voodoo, because your default zoom level is going to be enough that you're actually zooming in on the target as it is. Now it does make a difference because it's a heavier scope, and you know, it changes the gun, so just be warned with that as well. But if you're going to be playing on the higher FOV, use these. This is a 5x as well. And the reason I like this is because it doesn't take up as much of the screen itself. But the problem is you can see it's single plane. So like when you're zooming in, you're actually zooming in the actual like scope itself. Whereas that's at 23. Whereas if you pop this off and we run the Voodoo, the reason I like the Voodoo as well is because when you're zooming in, you're not really changing much on the actual scope itself. It kind of stays the same. But the Voodoo makes it takes up more of your screen. But at the 3x, this is kind of like if you're running 75 FOV, run a bigger scope like this, because it makes it a little bit nicer. You don't have to like zoom in and out every single time to make it. But hopefully that kind of makes sense of why I run 60 FOV as well. If you guys have any questions on the FOV, drop them in the comments below. But hopefully this helped kind of explain what FOV is, why it matters in gray zone. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe so I can continue bringing out content for you guys. I appreciate the love and support on the previous videos as well, but we'll see you around.